Hi everyone, welcome. A very, very good evening. Today is Women's Day, and I have a special wish for everybody today here. I want to first thank them for taking this step to, take care of themselves by coming and learning more about themselves. And I want to wish every woman here a very special Women's Day because this special Women's Day is important because today we are taking a step towards our health and well-being. And with today's topic, it is a little more than that. It is understanding yourself and loving yourself. And that's what Ayurveda is all about. So welcome everyone. Welcome Mary. Today we have Mary Thompson with us, who's going to talk about understanding a woman's body and self-image. Most of us have met Mary before, and those of you who've not met her before, Mary is a senior teacher in California College of Ayurveda. She's been given the title of Ayurveda Charya, which means a respected teacher of Ayurveda, and we're really lucky to be in her presence today to learn from her directly. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and it's exciting that it's Women's International Day of the Woman, and so it's an honor to be here and to be speaking to you tonight.
Thank you. To all the men also who are here, I always like to, every time we talk about women, I always like to acknowledge their presence and the effort that they make to understand women. So we would like to welcome everybody. And we have people here from Portugal, from Quebec, from San Diego, from Canada, from all over the world. It's wonderful to have this coming together of people from across the globe. Australia, of course. So, Mary, before we start off with today's topic, I just want to mention something a little bit. The fact that we love ourselves not enough is so underestimated. We don't realize this. It's not the selfish obsession with the self, nor are we talking about some kind of selfless sacrifice. We're just talking about a very simple consciousness of the self, a very simple love of the self. And when it comes to our bodies, specifically women, no matter what the age is, whether we are younger in the 20s, 30s, or late in the 60s, also, there is some sort of discomfort that arises out of expectation from our bodies. Now, Ayurveda has a lot with, it talks a lot about body work. It talks a lot about, weight management, digestive system. It's all about the physical well-being. But with what I understand, Ayurveda also has a very special vision towards this. It has a very special perception of womanhood and of our bodies. So what would you like to, how would you set the premise of Ayurvedic vision for womanhood?
That's a big question. One thing, there were a number of things that came to mind while you were speaking, and first thing you started about was this love of self. And I was thinking about when a woman has a baby, and we love the baby, and we look at the baby, and we want to just sit and stare at the baby. I was with a new mom yesterday, and so I just really relate to this. It doesn't matter what the baby looks like. It doesn't matter if the baby is different from other babies. It doesn't matter if anything about the baby. All we do is we love the baby, and we love it with a love that is pure, and we want to take care of it. And how different would we be if we looked at ourselves with that same level of loving? Not because, we don't see ourselves in perfection or imperfection. We end up seeing ourselves just as one. Ayurveda looks towards a woman's role and looks towards the mother. Care for the self is paramount because of the fact that we need to turn that around. Take care of the self so we can take care of the other. If I don't take care of myself, I have no energy or strength left to give out to the other things that I'm engaged in. So I think a principal role for Ayurveda when they think of women is like a mother. Not necessarily a mother of children, but a mother of herself and a mother of everyone around us that we tend to give and nurture. This is the idea behind Ayurveda and womanhood, is the opportunity to fully express Shakti and fully express that power and that energy There's the creative aspect. In Sankhya philosophy, they talk about consciousness, and they define consciousness as Purush. And there's the potential for form, and that is Prakriti. I wondered, because they would refer to a Purusha as having the masculine role in creation, the passive role. And I thought, well, that's funny. We don't usually think of men being passive. But when it comes to creation, women are the active part. Women carry the child. Women birth the child. And in the early stages of life, the woman becomes the sole source of nutrition for the child. So the woman really is the active creator out here. That woman, divine woman energy, is the active creator. Not to downplay the role of men, because it's very vitally important. But from an Ayurvedic perspective, the woman's responsible for the creation. And so in taking care of the self, we make sure that we stay strong enough and vital enough to inform that creation in a healthy way.
So, this is the philosophical aspect and to orient ourselves towards it. But what does Ayurveda say about the anatomy of a woman?
Okay. When we think about women, we think about women's and men's bodies, and we're all made up of the same tissues. The 7 dhatu that we talk about with Ayurveda, we find them in women's bodies, we find them in men's bodies. But there are 2 forms of tissue that we find in women's bodies that we don't see in men, and that is in breast milk and in menstrual fluid. And so this is unique to the woman's body that we don't see in men. And both of these tissues are made of rasa dhatu. Now you might remember, because I think we talked about rasa dhatu one time before, but with rasa dhatu, this is the vital fluids that fill our bodies. It's the nourishment that we bring and carries the vital prana to every cell. It also carries nutrition to every cell. So when we have adequate levels of prana, we're really well hydrated. We're able to feed the body really well. Women's bodies have more rasa. They have more need for rasa dhatu, and they produce more rasa. So what this means is, what's unique about a woman's anatomy is the presence of tissues that men simply don't have. And the reason they don't have them is because they don't need to carry a child or feed a child. So a woman's body depends on really high quality rasa dhatu. So we can think about, how do we create high quality rasa dhatu? Well, rasa dhatu is created from our fluids that we take in. So we look at the beverages we take in and see if they're really vital and nourishing for the body. We look at the foods that we eat, and are they fluid rich? Are they vital, or are they old or stale? So we're trying to make sure the things we take in are going to build healthy fluids in the body, because that's going to build rasa dhatu, which is really the only difference in anatomy between men and women. We could name the different body parts, but we all have the same except for those sexual characteristics.
So this is very interesting. I just made a note of this. You just said that rasa dhatu is influenced by our liquid intake, what we take in. Now, immediately as soon as you said liquid intake, I could see coffee mugs, and I could see Cokes, and I could see all these drinks that we have, and it strikes me, how do these affect our rasa dhatu?
That's an excellent question. Coffee and sodas, brown sodas especially, they tend to be what we call diuretics, which means they make you urinate. Now the downside of this is, for the 1 cup of coffee that you drink, say you drink 8 ounces of coffee, you're going to urinate out about 12 ounces of fluid, because you have the fluid you brought in with the coffee, plus it likes to take a little bit more water out with it. So women have to be careful of what they're drinking, because if it's got too much of a diuretic property, they'll end up depleting their fluids and getting drier and drier and drier. And you'll see that dryness in their skin. They might see it in chapped lips or cracked lips, cracking of the skin at the heels. These would be signs that I'm pulling moisture out of the cells. And so, and you're right, when we look at water that we take in, from a Western standpoint, they kind of look at all water as water. So coffee is water and wine is water or anything else. But from an Ayurvedic perspective, if the waters we take in, if the fluids we take in cause us to sweat or cause us to urinate, they're going to pull water out of the body, and it's going to actually make us drier than if we didn't have it at all. What I'll often ask people to do is before you have a cup of coffee, I'm not saying never, never, never have a cup of coffee, but before you have a cup of coffee, drink at least the same amount in water. So sometimes people reach for coffee or soda because they're thirsty, but the end result is going to be more thirst, because as they drink the drink, they pull those waters out of the body and they're left still thirsty. And unfortunately, they reach for another soda. And so if I drink the water first, I will tend to minimize that drying effect, and I won't need to reach for the next drink that I want to get. But I think you're right. We have to look at water, but we can get water from our food as well. We have to look at the things we drink to consider, does this have adequate water in it for what I'm needing to take? But we can also look at our foods themselves and ask, is this food moist? Is this food have good water content? If not, how can I make it moister? So I could look at a piece of fruit and it's got a lot of water in it. I think about this because I juice things sometimes. And I took a cucumber and I ran the cucumber through my juicer, and I ended up with just about a tablespoon of pulp and about a cup and a half of water, of the juice. And I was struck with, if I eat the cucumber, I'm getting a lot of water. And so that's one thing to consider, is we can get it from our foods as well. The other thing I was thinking of is looking at, sometimes convenience foods are very dry. And so I have to watch out for packaged foods or processed foods that become too dry and might dry me out even more. Women's bodies do best when they stay really well moistened. Another trick we can use, not so much a trick as it is a treat sometimes, is looking at having a little bit more oil in the diet. Oil helps hold water in the body, and this is going to be very important, that we're able to hold the water into the tissues and really deeply, deeply, deeply nourish those cells.
Wow, that's also an interesting tip for most of us also. I think dehydration, when you're not drinking enough water or when your body is dehydrated, you also tend to gain weight. And when people are gaining weight, then they try to cut out all fats, oils and everything from their diet. And then that's, I think with what you said, that's also counterproductive.
Yes, because when we take in fats, what's interesting is to think it's not really our fats, as long as we're getting healthy fats, it's not our fats that are causing us to gain weight. It's usually excess sugars that the body stores as fat. So if I'm eating good quality fats, like nut oils, walnut oil, sesame oil, these kinds of fats, even ghee, the body knows how to process those, and it's going to use those oils to make healthy cell membrane and to build a good layer of subcutaneous fat. When my diet is too high in sugars, my body says, she wants this energy later. And it converts those sugars into the fats that we see in my belly and on my hips. And so when I begin to look at big fatty pockets, that's really more commonly done because of too much sugar in my diet, not too much fat. And it seems counterintuitive, but so often when I have people increase their fat intake, they lose weight. And it's because the body feels satisfied. You often see sweets cravings disappear too, which is really important.
Okay, so that's about the diet and intake, and this reminded me of the rasa tea that you talk about in the course in Mary's program. So Mary authored with us this program called the Ayurvedic Woman, and it talks about menstrual issues, it talks about menopause, and it talks about women's health in general. You can check it out if you've not yet done so on the right-hand side. But in that program, she mentions rasa tea, which is basically it helps in your menstrual health and reproductive health, and maybe Mary can talk more about it, and maybe we'll give out the recipe to that tea also at the end of the session, if we will. Let's go on to the next question. The next question is about the ideal state, the body, my body, the body of a woman at all stages. This whole idea of losing weight and being very fit. And in fact, what's really disturbing is, I don't know if it's really disturbing, but if you type yoga online and if you see images that come up, they're all of very young, fit women in very sporty sports clothes with, figures which are, for the ordinary woman who's not so perfect, which are almost intimidating to see. You see that, and then even for yoga, you feel, oh my God, I can't even go to this yoga class because there are all these fit women, all these, really fancy clothes, and I can't even fit into those clothes. Maybe I should not even do yoga. So this whole, this whole idea of perfect fitness has percolated into the sphere of yoga also. But Ayurveda maybe still has some space to accommodate the rest of us. What does it say about that?
That's so interesting. I remember a time when someone gave me a yoga calendar, and each of the asana were done so perfectly that I was intimidated even looking at the calendar, because I thought, I can't put my hands flat on the floor, or I can't bend my head to my knee. And I was intimidated by seeing the asana that they were able to do. And I call this, what you're talking about here, body beautiful yoga, where we put more emphasis on how we look than what we're gaining from the yoga asana. It's been a gift to the West that yoga has come to the West, and it informs so many of our fitness protocols that are here. So many people are chasing this elusive dream. And I do think it does a disservice when we see only these women who have perfect frames in very beautiful new yoga pants and yoga outfits, and it does get intimidating. And what it reminds me of is there's a principle in Ayurveda, and some people use it as the term for perfect health, and it's swasta. Swasta is being in connection with and embodying the self. So we have this ability to embody our physical body. And as we would look at the baby, and even if the baby is imperfect, we still love the baby because of the potential that is there. What we'd like to do in swasta is to embrace the potential that this body has and not be so caught up in its immediate appearance. I have one friend who lost a good deal of weight. And she had gotten down to a weight that was probably 20 pounds higher than her weight in her 20s. And she said, if I had only known in my 20s how good I looked, because when she was in her 20s, she looked in the mirror and she didn't meet that expectation. When she was in her 40s and she lost weight, she began to appreciate how good she looked at this new weight. And I think what we want to do is to allow ourselves in this moment to appreciate the strength of the body, to appreciate the gifts of the body, and maybe be less critical of the ways in which we're always looking for imperfection. When we get caught up in a mind state that is critical, then we're likely to only see problems. If I look at my feet from a critical eye, I can see that toe is not look the way I like that toe to look, or my nails don't look the way I like my nails to look. I'm not concerned with the health or the lack of health. I'm only concerned with an appearance. When I get stuck at appearance, I'm stuck at the most superficial level. When I get stuck at that superficial level, I'm unable to really see the truth behind it. So what I'd like to do is to try to set aside my critical judgment and allow myself to appreciate possibly different qualities that are there. Think about what my feet have to do if I'm picking on my feet for a minute. What do they do? Do they give me any pain? No. Do they work? Are they strong? Are they supple? How's the skin of that? And look for areas where I can improve, and then think of ways in which I can improve it, rather than areas that I begin to criticize and be judgmental of and want to hide. But this concept I wanted to talk about was swasta. Swasta being embodied in the self. When I'm embodied in my physical body, then I want those things that are going to help me feel better in my physical body. One of the ironies is the more critical I get of my physical body, the more I reach for comfort foods which may alter the shape and size of my physical body. The more critical I am, then maybe I want to take some sweet and eat that so I feel good about myself because I'm eating the sweet, but then I further worsen the condition that I have in my physical body. It's an irony that as soon as I accept myself just as I am, then and only then can I begin to change. So I want to be in acceptance of this physical body, and with an eye to, yes, I'd like my calf to be stronger, or I would like to lose the weight on my hips, but I still love myself even though I have the weight on my hips and my calves aren't as strong. With the swastika, we go a step beyond and say we can also be embodied in our mind. And so I can begin to examine that state of mind and say, why am I so critical of myself? Why is it, I can look at this picture of this young girl and I immediately project that she is happier than me because she is thinner than I am. And I have to consider, why do I place myself in this position of judging myself based on someone else? So I can be embodied in that in my mind, and I can begin to think about, how can I create happiness here? I'm not happy when I look at a picture of someone and I feel bad about myself because they look better than I think I do. And I can change my focus. I can say, what can I do to improve my physical health and my well-being? Because when I come down to it, there will always be young girls in beautiful yoga clothes when I go to a yoga class. And I want to be able to appreciate what I am doing. So keep my focus on myself and my accomplishments. I did better with my asana today than I did yesterday. I feel stronger. My breath is better. My skin is clearing up. Whatever the things are, I want to look for those things where I'm improving rather than those that I can judge in light of someone else and bring kind of harm to myself.
So, this reminds me of something. I've been a little bit of a personal experience. So, I've been trying different regimes, and of late I've been struggling with, exercise is very important, and I've been struggling with, what format to choose to exercise. And I tried, tried gymming for a while, and, when you go to, so there's this thing that I've been thinking about for the longest time, this difference in this, Western or say, gymming kind of exercise and the original yoga. Now, original yoga is not about hot pants and crazy asanas. That's not original yoga. It's about the whole journey of yoga or of the way Ayurveda orients you is about first settling down. It's about discovering different parts of your body, going slow, going gentle. It's a different process. Whereas the other kind of exercise is all about, it's about aggression, it's about fire, it's about run harder, it's about kill, 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 it's about pick up those weights. The energy is very like I'm going to war. Now, the way you feel during those two experiences is very different. And whereas one is about kill the fat self, the other is about discover what you have. It's about experience different parts of your body. So many times when you open up, be conscious of your body, you don't even realize, okay, this is how the knees feel till you pay attention to them, right? And Ayurveda, I remember reading somewhere that Ayurveda says that you should only exercise to the point where you are slightly sweating and you should not be exhausted. Now, what would you say about that? How does,
Yeah, well, you bring up some really good points again. One of the things to consider is when we're exercising, whether we're at the gym or we're doing yoga asana, we'd like to be able to exercise where we can always breathe through the nose. If I get to the point where I have to breathe through the mouth because I can't take in enough air through the nose, then I trigger a sympathetic nervous system reaction and I go into oxygen debt. What that means is my cells stop breaking down fat and they keep breaking down sugar. So I want to be able, if I really want to work on toning down and trimming down, lose some weight, then I want to make sure I can always breathe through the nose. I would like to be exercising to the point where I could talk but not sing. That I've got good control of breath, but I've got just about at that barrier where if I was working any harder, I might have to breathe through my mouth. What this does is it makes sure that we always stay in a fat burning range. We're going to stay in that space of we could sweat, but we're not going to be exhausted. If we think about it, if I asked you to run a mile or I asked you to walk as long as you possibly could, if I asked you to run as long as you could and walk as long as you could, you would exhaust yourself running much sooner. You could walk for days because We're always working at that level of we've got plenty in our reserves and we're feeding the self and we're able to use that energy to fuel our work. Another thing you were talking about is being in a yoga asana class. The best asana class I ever attended was an hour and a half long, and during that time we did 3 asana. It took us a half an hour to get into an asana because she would look with alignment and we would rest in the balls of the feet for a minute and then we would bend the knees and we just gently moved from standing into the asana. And then we'd go into Shavasana and rest, and then she'd move into another asana. And typically I'm a little frustrated at yoga classes because so often they move faster than I would like to move. There's a place in town that does something called Yoga Hour, which is 60 asana in 60 minutes. And I thought, a minute per asana? It's so incredibly fast. And people are panting and they are exhausted and they are sweating. And it takes us away from our bodies. I think so much of our time at the gym and so much of our time in active classes is designed as a distraction for the mind to take us out of the present moment. But with Ayurveda and yoga, it's about that union. We want to be brought into the body, into the present moment, into relationship with the self. And like you said, so I can observe this is what the knee feels like, and this is how the ankle is bent, and this is how the hip is in conjunction. And we get in relationship with the physical body. While we're doing that, yoga being union, we're bringing the mind and body into the same place. When the mind and body are together, we can resolve imbalances that we are carrying in the mind. We can let go of those things that are creating the war, the rage. And we can begin to see that they're all illusion. When I'm actively moving, say I'm jumping from one asana to the next, I don't have the opportunity to see what's bubbling up from my emotional body, to see where it is that I'm holding and some kind of resistance, or where it is that I'm too loose and I need to get more strength. That what I see happening more and more often with the gym and with other places is this, although you're working on the body, your mind is somewhere else. And so with yoga, with Ayurveda, we want to be in the same place at the same time. I heard on the radio yesterday there's a yoga studio in Vancouver that's doing rage yoga that they do. It's held in the bottom of the ground floor of a bar, and they yell and they swear and all these things. And I thought, that just sounds as far away from yoga as I could imagine. That it's that idea of this distraction in some way. And maybe you'll end up with a good-looking body doing that, but you won't have achieved what yoga is trying to achieve, which is the union of the body and the mind with focus and attention on the spirit. And so I think it's important every day for women, actually for everyone. Daily exercise is vitally important. And we do want to do stretching exercises. We do want to do aerobic exercises, or those that get our heartbeat up and our respiration up. And 3 to 5 times a week, we'd like to do some type of strength training. And that could be body weight. It could be things we do with our own bodies, like pull-ups or lunges. Or it could be using free weights or gym machines or things like this. But yoga asana offers you the opportunity to do stretching, to do aerobic, and to do body weight lifting all at the same time. Think of like the sun salutation. Going through that, I increase the heart rate and respiration. I'm stretching all the major muscle groups of the body, and I'm holding up my own weight, say in downward dog or in forward bends and things that I'm going to support my body weight and do strength training as well. So I think it's important if we're exercising that we incorporate all 3 of those aspects of exercise, but I think also to pay attention to our environment. So if I'm in an environment where I'm exercising and I'm feeling more angry at the end of exercise than I was at the beginning, then it's moving me further away from that sense of peace and happiness that I want to cultivate. And then I want to say, okay, I can cultivate a beautiful body, but if I have a disturbed mind, then I won't appear to have cultivated a beautiful body. I'll still look disturbed.
So it all, I think, comes down to, there's one word which kind of makes everything sensible, which is consciousness, and anything done with consciousness. And there's a beautiful word in Sanskrit which is prana, and we talk about prana in food. We talk about prana is essentially consciousness, and The other thing is that with conscious of our bodies rather than being conscious of our bodies. You know, the difference that we're worried about, we're conscious about what doesn't look good, but we're not really conscious of what we're eating, conscious of what we're doing. And this kind of consciousness that you're talking about is more loving than it is condemning. And this is what I really want to talk about. When do you love your body? What is the ideal state that it should be, that deserves our love? And this is a very important question. So, for example, Sandra here asks a very touching, she says something very touching, which I think a lot of us would relate to in some way or the other. And I'll read out her question to you. She says, Mary, I am very intrigued about having a demanding mother with image that can influence daughters having bulimia at some point in their life. My sister had when she was a teenager. I developed some bulimia after my father passed away. Some weight, and my mother constantly judges me. I feel inadequate.
Mm. It's so hard with bulimia. Oftentimes there is the sense that we are not good enough, that we don't deserve that bite of food. If we think of bulimia has a quality of both binging, and then it could be purging, but it could also be use of laxatives or over-exercise, so I don't get the value. I don't get to have that joyful experience from the food. And oftentimes, with the component of binge eating, there's a shameful association with it, that I feel bad about myself when I do this. So we look at the idea of having a mother, and the mother, in the best possible world, the mother is the foundation of the child's psyche. And we want that mother to be like the mom I saw yesterday with her newborn, gazing and loving this baby and telling the baby, who can't do anything for itself, that it's perfect. But when we have a mother who's domineering and tells us that regardless of what we're doing, we are imperfect, we internalize that imperfection, and it becomes for us something that we call a samskara, or a tendency. So we have a tendency to relate to ourselves and to call ourselves imperfect. The mother may be long gone. Maybe I've refused to talk to the mother anymore, but I continue the mother's dialogue in my own head. And the only way to get that dialogue to stop is to reach for something like the food that I binge on, to reach for something that's going to help me for a short time to let go of the mother's diatribe. And so this is really a case, when we look at something like this, it's not a physical imbalance. What it is a struggle between the mind, trying to struggle between happiness and sadness and grief. You come into the world and you deserve to have a parent who loves you unconditionally. When you don't have that, you try to find some way to tell yourself it's okay. And so bulimia is an end result of that kind of split between what you deserve and what you got. And so as an adult, you have the opportunity to give yourself what you deserve. And what you deserve is unconditional loving. What you deserve is someone who tells you that you are perfect in this moment, and that you can do things to bring balance to your body and your mind. And you can retrain yourself. I call it retrain your brain, which is find those times when you allow that mom's voice to come back again and again and again. And every time you find yourself playing that tape that says, I'm not good enough, I'm inadequate, I'm not perfect, I'm bad, that you say, oh, I'm going to replace that. I'm not going to think that stuff anymore. I'm going to think of things that are good about me. And maybe you're smart, maybe you're funny, maybe you're good at numbers, maybe you're good at anything. You do Sudoku puzzles well. Whatever it is you do well, begin to look for and illuminate those things about yourself that are good, that you see as good, that you value. And every time that voice comes up that says, yeah, but, you say, okay, let's see what else is good about me. I can really put an outfit together. I love my hair color. I do a good job I like my socks. Whatever it is that you do, keep replacing those thoughts. And what happens is you retrain your brain. Every time your brain's going this way, it's going to say, oh, I'm supposed to do this. And it's going to come over and start thinking of things about yourself that you like. it's hard. Bulimia, all kinds of eating disorders can be very hard to recover from because they come out of our first nurture. The mother is the one who was supposed to feed us and nurture us and love us. And when she doesn't do that, or when she does that along with criticism and blame, we think we can only eat when we feel bad about ourselves. And so we want to retrain that into finding ways that you can honor yourself, love yourself, and feed yourself in a way that's unconditionally loving.
So that's an important point there, that to address this physical issue, you first have to address the essential psychological issue and the key to which you gave. Are there any other practical suggestions that you would like to give her, or that you would like her to take up? Because I remember Sandra was there for some of our other sessions also, and there too this topic was discussed. So is there something else you would like to recommend to her?
One of the big triggers for all kinds of eating disorders is stress. And so looking at the stresses in her life and finding ways to bring those into control will be really important. Feeding the self is really vital as well. So making sure that when you are eating breakfast, lunch, dinner, that the food is fresh and whole and organic and as nourishing as you can make it. People who have bulimia aren't eating because of hunger. They're eating because of kind of a soul hunger. And it's that. And so when you can make sure you've met your physical demands, that's going to take a step towards helping to reduce stresses. Making sure sleep is good helps to reduce stresses. We talk a lot about self-care in Ayurveda. So in the morning, making sure that we touch the body. This is really important for all women, regardless of what they're going through. That in the morning, we recommend people do an oil massage. This gives us the opportunity to touch the body, and while we're doing this, to appreciate and love the body for all it does for us. It carries so much during the day. It holds all my emotions, but it also is my strength, it's my tissues. And so while I'm touching my body, just thinking and thanking this body for being the vehicle for my mind and being the vessel for my spirit, and recognizing that it's perfect. It's exactly what I need in this moment. All my lessons are locked in here, and I can uncover them. And I don't want to stop at the lesson. The lesson, especially like with something like bulimia or other eating disorder, the lesson isn't the eating disorder. The lesson is the self-love that's going to dissolve that. But I know there are big triggers for many types of eating disorders. The trigger is stress. And so when you can work with feeling better about the self, and we start that by showing up for the self. We feed the self, we do self-care, we nurture the self, and we examine when stresses are coming up. We say, what can I do to resolve this stress? Maybe I can reach out for help, or I can say, no, I'm not taking it on.
Great. Sandra, she's saying this is the most beautiful explanation she's heard about bulimia. She's in tears and she's very grateful to you. And I thought I must convey this to you. And to everybody else who's here, we organize these webinars to impart education and knowledge about Ayurveda, but there's also something deeper to it, which is this connection that we feel through all this technology, all these words on chat and all this that you see. There's a connection of souls here that we're talking about. There's a connection of exchanging our problems and needs and getting solutions like this, which is so enriching for us also, and it's a pleasure for us to be able to do this. So thank you for asking these questions to everybody, and thank you for guests like you, Mary, to come to this platform and enable this. Now, with the last point that you made about Abhyanga or self-massage. Now, there's something very beautiful that you said, and I would like to bring to light. So it's about, like you said, feeding the soul. We need to do things that feed the soul. We need to do things that feed the body. There's so much conversation about the right kind of diet and everything. But this body work is something which is, not really, we don't really pay so much attention to it. We think, oh, you have to go to a spa center to get a massage and relax and get de-stressed and come back. But there's something so ritualistically beautiful about self-massage when you take that oil and when you're reaching out to every single part of your body and massaging it through. Either you see your cellulite and feel worse about it, or you're just, you're getting a step closer to you're loving yourself. And this
Mhm.
is what you brought to light. If you could just elaborate a little bit more on this.
I feel it's really essential. Women are hoping to lose weight or hoping to do any kind of body work. I find that they really need to do Abhyanga. They need to have a relationship with their body that is, oh, what's the word? Copacetic? It's that they're not adversarial. We're not working against our body. And I think this gets to what you're talking about at the gym where you're in a fight with the body. In this case, we're working with the body. We're saying, I honor and I respect you, and I like you enough to take care of you. That so often we don't want to take care of the body, we don't want to look at it, or we don't want to deal with it. And with Abhyanga, we get that opportunity to nurture it. Abhyanga is often considered a really important part of the morning ritual, the things we do in the morning to set the tone for the day. Now imagine your alarm clock goes off and you jump out of bed, you put on your clothes, you run out to the car, you get in the car, you stop at a coffee shop, you go to work. Now imagine your alarm clock goes off, you go to your bathroom, and there you have some oil that's already warmed for you. And you begin the process of your day by kind of thanking your body. Also, I always talk about this with people when they're going to do Abhyanga, is how much different would it be if I'm doing this massage going, oh yeah, I've got that webinar this evening. I wonder what I'm going to talk about during that. Oh, I should got those emails to respond to. I've got to get on that. Oh, geez, I told that student I'd talk to him at lunchtime today, but I'm not sure I can do that. All I've done is work all of my problems and my stress into my tissue. And I walk out of the bathroom and I say, oh, what am I going to do? I got all this stuff going on. And then I counter that if I go in there and I just think I've got some nice music on, and I just allow myself the time to pacify what's happening at the body tissues. When I do that Abhyanga, I have about 3,000 free nerve endings in the surface of the skin. When I do the Abhyanga, it's like I put a blanket around myself. So now when the phone rings, I don't jump. I go, oh, look, the phone is ringing. Because I feel calmed in my nervous system. I've told my nervous system in doing this that everything's going to be all right. And I feel better. I then walk out the door and I feel calm, grounded in my body. How differently is my day going to flow from that point as it flowed for me racing to the car, running to the coffee shop, and running out from beyond? When I look at what I do in the morning for self-care, sets the stage for the rest of the day, how the rest of the day is going to lay out. When I said earlier that whenever I'm working with someone who's trying to lose weight, I insist that they begin with Abhyanga. Because when we look at our bodies and we're unsatisfied with what we look at, and this would be true for people who want to gain weight as well, that I set myself up that my body is against me. Now think about that for a minute. My body is me. It's one part of me. How could it be against me? Really, without my mind, my body would just lay there. That's what it does at night. When my mind is somewhere else, my body isn't up, working against me in some way, plotting what it's going to do to get me in some way. It's just, it's my vessel. It's my tool. And so when I'm doing that Abhyanga, I want to think of what I can do to take care of it. I was reading a book that's called, I think it's called The Miracle of Tidying Up. Well, I don't know if I have the title right. But in it, the author speaks about surround yourself with things you love because you'll take care of them. And I thought, that's interesting. And I looked at an appliance. I have a Vitamix, and I love my Vitamix. I never let the blender thing sit dirty. It always gets cleaned right away. It gets put away. It gets revered because I love this appliance so much. And then I think about what if I approach my body from that same standpoint, that I can love this body even in its imperfection. Maybe my breasts aren't as big as I'd like them to be, or maybe they're not as small as I'd like them to be. Maybe my hips are wider than I want them to be, or maybe they're more narrow and my bottom's flat. Everybody is looking at their body critically. Even that girl in the yoga pants that we talked about earlier, she's looking at her body and she doesn't like the size of her breasts, the length of her neck, the way her hair's curly or the way her hair's straight. We're all looking at ourselves and thinking we could do better. But what if, for a fraction of a second, even for a moment in the day, you said, I'm enough. This body is enough. It does good work. even if it's in pain. You can say, oh, my body's in pain. What can I do to help my body? Rather than, this darn body better stop giving me pain. You know? So I think with Abhyanga, we have that opportunity to show up for ourselves in a very real way. This is one thing I've been looking at lately, is how do we show up for ourselves and believe that we can trust ourselves and believe that we can depend on ourselves. And this is what we're doing every morning when we do the morning routines, including Abhyanga or including the self-care of the sense organs. We're telling ourselves that we care enough about this body to show up and take care of it, in the same way I might with a new car.
Okay, so I have another question. Is Abhyanga or body work or, massage any different for women than it is for men? I'm asking this question because there's been a lot of conversation about, points on the woman's body, for example, for sexual arousal, whereas for men there are only certain, certain points, whereas for the women there are many more. So does it make women more receptive to touch, or, is it more healing for women?
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, I just thought it's an interesting aspect.
I want to say yes and no. Abhyanga is most beneficial for women because it helps to hold moisture in, it helps us to retain rasa. One example I think of for this, and I use this in my class all the time, is I say, imagine you had 2 glasses of water and you put them in the windowsill. In one of the glasses, you put a fine layer of oil across the top. In the other glass, you don't. In 3 days' time, the one with the oil is going to show no change. The one without the oil is going to have evaporated some of the water. So when we put the oil on the surface of the body, it's like we're putting that oil on top of the water, and we prevent evaporation. We spend water all the time. We spend water in urination, certainly, but we sweat water, and we have water that moves out with respiration and water that moves out with our stool as well. And some of that water is coming out right through the surface of the skin. And so when we have that oil on the surface, we're going to retain that water, and that's going to help us to hold on to rasa. With women, we're always trying to find ways to be juicier, and that's what Abhyanga does, is it helps us to have more water. Now, the other concept of erogenous zones, for women, it could be anywhere. It might be the side of the neck. I mean, there's certainly the obvious places, the breasts or around the genitals, but every woman has different places. What's interesting to note, though, is that when you're touching yourself, you don't trigger those. You can't tickle yourself. You can try, but you're not going to tickle yourself. Whereas another person can come up and very gently touch you, and you're going to shy away. So what the Abhyanga does, and how it would help with women with sexual arousal, is it slows down the impact of the free nerve endings. So it allows them to be more receptive when you'd like them to be receptive, and less receptive all the rest of the time. So if I have I do no Abhyanga, I have a vata imbalance, and I've got kind of this hypersensitivity, then everything becomes too much. And so the touch doesn't have arousal with it, it's simply frightening. But if I can quiet those free nerve endings, then I can receive sensual touch or loving touch in a way that my body responds to without fear. And so what I would think of is what this is going to do, what the Abhyanga will do, is pacify the nervous system enough that you may be present for arousal in a way that's not going to leave you going into fight or flight response, which is what happens when our nervous system is overwhelmed.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering that maybe there's something about, touch and receptivity to women that's even more healing. And as you mentioned, the mother and child connection, that touch is a very essential part of healing and love. And we're more and more disconnected, more and more busy, and this culture of warm exchange is getting further and further away, which further affects our ideas. And I just thought that maybe it makes you warmer, it makes you more loving when you do Abhyanga. It's just an idea, just a thought. Okay,
this is This is why men need to do Abhyanga.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's another question. So yeah, this is an important aspect to what every time we have this conversation, this topic always comes up, which is the lack of time. And someone here says that it sounds great, but with a 3-year-old, it's hard to find time for myself. Thank you. I'm overweight and don't even want to be seen right now. My esteem is low. I'll try and be fit and fit in self-massage somehow. Now, this is disturbing, when you hear something like, I don't even want to be seen right now. I understand there may not be time for Abhyanga, but maybe, like Mary suggested, first fixing the way first changing what we think about ourselves. We don't need time for that, right? I mean, do we need time for that? What would you say to our guest here?
Is all of this was from the mom of the 3-year-old, yeah?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. One, I honor you because it's hard to have a little one at home. One thing to recognize is oftentimes you don't want to be touched because there is so much body contact that we have with little ones. When they're 2 and 3 years old, they're always touching us, and they don't really recognize that there's a separation between our body and places we might want to be touched and not want to be touched. They tend to have kind of this sense of ownership about mom's body that can get really exhausting by the time they're about 3. When they're really little and they don't demand so much, it's easy to be open and loving with them. And then when they get older and they're able to take care of some of their own needs, it becomes more exhausting when they're on us all the time. So I really honor you for recognizing that it may be this sense of, oh my gosh, it's just too much to do the Abhyanga. If you get any time in quiet, or if you have a bath that you can do, what I recommend is if you can take a time and fill the bathtub and use castor oil, but a small amount, like 2 tablespoons castor oil on the top of the water. Castor oil is unique because it will spread across the surface of the water. It won't do those bubbles like sesame oil will go into blob, blob, blob. Castor oil is more like motor oil where it spreads across the surface. And then as you take any time in the tub, be able to massage that into the body is going to help, because what's probably happening is your nerve endings are a little raw from constantly being touched. You mentioned too, there's like not wanting to be seen. We're also hypercritical in our society of what the body looks like after birth. That there are, places that used to be tight are not so tight anymore, or things that used to be perky aren't so perky anymore, and we get critical of this new body. And so using the mind to shift this a little bit is when I find myself being critical of this new body, can I look at the miracle that it created in your 3-year-old. It was able to carry and nurture and feed this baby. And yes, the body is different, but it's a woman's body. It's a mom's body. And so finding times when you can honor those parts of it, that it's done an amazing thing bringing this baby into the world. And I think our culture tends to put a little bit of shame on moms who don't recover their pre-baby body in 6 weeks. We get these magazine covers with the women who have gotten back into these amazing shape, but these are typically women who have had personal trainers and personal chefs and nannies, 3 nannies taking care of the one baby, whereas you're doing all of that. So recognizing and honoring yourself might be the one step to go to, and saying, okay, wow, I've done all this and I still look pretty good. It's like, look for those things about your body that are looking really good and find a way to nurture them. Another thing, if you don't have time to do a full Abhi, if you have time before you go to bed to put some oil on the soles of your feet with possibly a little lavender essential oil in there, or if you don't have essential oil, just an oil is fine. And take a moment to just appreciate your body. The feet do so much and they don't get very much love down there. But it's one, as you're touching the body, it's going to help you sleep better, unless your 3-year-old's waking you up every few hours like mine did years ago. But it'll help you to sleep better, and it's going to start that process of, I can still take care of myself. As moms, we put our child first and ourselves second. We begin that when we're pregnant. The body feeds the baby first, and you get fed second. And we continue that. And now, while the child's 3, is the time to take back some of that, I'm going to nurture myself too. And it sets an excellent example for your child of self-care. And you might even teach them how to do massage on their own feet, and you two could sit together and do it. and find things that you can do together. There's a woman friend of mine who was doing Shavasana, and she's got her daughter comes up and lays on top of her. It's like I can't even do this yoga asana in peace. But taking the time to work with your child on doing some things. You might teach them how to do foot massage, and you massage their feet, and then they get to massage your feet in a way that you get some nurture back in a way that's really, I was going to say nurturing to you.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think those tips were really helpful, and I hope you found them useful too. With this, we've almost come to the end of the entire hour, and I have no idea where the hour went by. It's really been such a fantastic journey. But let's take up, there are a few things which were left out. So maybe I'll just summarize them all together into one. And there was this one aspect which we haven't yet touched in this conversation, which is the beautiful diet and lifestyle practices. How do you feel beautiful? It's most important to feel beautiful, and what would you say for that?
Well, it's one of those things, like you always hear people say happiness is an inside job, but beauty is an inside job too. We've probably all seen people that on first appearance, we weren't very attracted to them. But once you got to know them, that inner light shone through, and you would think, oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. I remember thinking this with a Barbra Streisand movie one time. At the beginning of the movie, I thought, she's not very good looking. By the end of the movie, I thought she was gorgeous because of the persona she played in that film. So one thing we can do when we want to truly have a beautiful diet, we want our food to be beautiful. If you think about the food that you're eating, one of the concepts we have in Ayurveda and in yoga is this concept that there is an aspect of the Creator that dwells inside us. And so think about, if God showed up at my door one day, knocked on the door and said, I'd like to go to lunch with you, would I be likely to take him to McDonald's? Oh, I know this perfect place, God. You and I can walk down to McDonald's, we'll get some fast food, and then later on, I don't know, we'll get a Milky Way bar or something. And rather, I would want to bring out my best. I want my best china. I want my best food. I want to make my favorite recipe. I want to really honor this guest in my home. And now we think, if I'm that God, if I am that aspect of the Creator that is walking around in the world, how can I nourish myself? What would I want to feed myself? So as we look at the food, we want the food to be fresh and whole and vital, because that's what's going to create fresh, vital energy in the body. There was a study that was done by a Japanese scientist where he had 2 vials of water, and one vial of water he told it was beautiful, and the other one he said it was ugly. And then he looked at the water molecules under a microscope, and the beautiful water molecules were beautiful. They had perfect shape, and they were just lovely. And the ones he had called ugly and stupid were malformed. So what we say about ourselves and what we say to ourselves about ourselves is also food. When we tell ourselves that we're worth this effort of this food, or we're worth this love, then we're going to project more beauty. So one thing, beautiful diet is a diet that's whole, fresh, organic, that looks lovely when you're eating it. Even better if you've been able to prepare it, or someone has prepared it for you that has thought about, I would love for you to feel good and look good when you eat this. Lifestyle practices that are beautiful lifestyle practices are those times that we can truly reach that core of ourselves and love ourselves, because when we love ourselves, we're able to shine that love outward towards others, and we're going to appear more beautiful. We'll be more attractive to people. They'll want to be with us, and they will, when they think about us, they'll say, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. Not because we look like a movie star, but because when we look at them and we see the beauty in them, they feel that. And what they're going to remember, I don't remember who said this, I think it was Maya Angelou who said, people will forget what you say, but they will always remember how you make them feel. Mm-hmm. And so when you are present with people and showing up for them and sending out acceptance and love for them, you're going to be more beautiful in their estimation. So when we look at the beautiful lifestyle practice, it's kind of digging in the dirt a little bit, finding those corners of self-loathing and saying, I'm not carrying this anymore. Somebody else planted that seed. You didn't. And you don't have to grow that weed in your garden. That you can pick it out and say, I choose to think positively about myself. And I let go of these stories that someone else, my parent, a teacher, a neighbor, told me about myself many years ago that I've allowed to form my self-identity. So the beautiful lifestyle practice is stop believing we're not beautiful, is probably the best thing we can do and the strongest thing we can do.
Thank you, Mary. There's another little question by Soph. She says, is it helpful to put oil on my hair at night while I sleep as a way of loving me? Also oil in my feet.
Mm-hmm. You can do that. Some people don't like to put oil in their hair because they don't like the look. But putting oil on the scalp, and especially at the very top, the crown of what's called the aperture of Brahman, can be really beneficial for getting a good night's sleep. When you think about they put oil at the top and oil on the feet, you've kind of contained all your energy inside your body, and that can lead to a really nice night's sleep.
Okay, Marie here says that lovely words. Mary, you are very easy to listen to. And this is something that I tell everyone, that just listening to Mary talk is such a calming experience, which turns you into profundity. And it's really a pleasure to be able to listen to you live and to be here with you. As we come to the closing of this session, I did make a promise about rasa tea, and if we can quickly give everyone the recipe and and why it's good to have rasa tea.
Okay. Yes, rasa tea is a name that I call a tea that helps build the quality of the rasa dhatu. It's got herbs in it that are demulcent herbs, which are pretty easy to find. And I have to confess that I probably make it different just about every time, but I'm going to give you a basic recipe for it. And its foundation is fennel and fenugreek seeds. And I like to put marshmallow root, and licorice. If you can get your hands on shatavari, I really like cut and sifted shatavari in it. And then I use some spices. I might like cardamom or ginger. So what I do is I'm typically going to make a batch of it. So I'll take a tablespoon measure and put a tablespoon of fennel seeds, a tablespoon of fenugreek. If I have the marshmallow root, tablespoon of marshmallow root, tablespoon of licorice root. If I can get my hands on the shatavari cut and sifted, I'll put that in. And then a spoonful or two of the cardamom, one of ginger, something like that. Now I've got this whole batch that's made up of, I think I just chose 7 herbs there. So I'll have 7 tablespoons. That's going to give me 7 different cups of tea. So I take a tablespoon of that blend into a cup and a half of water, and I bring it to a boil for about 5 minutes. And then just strain it and drink it. And it's delicious, and it helps build rasa in the body. And if you did, I don't know if you wrote that down, but I can write that down and send it to you, and you can send it out to anybody who'd like it.
Absolutely. It's also a part of the program. Those of you who have the program will be able to access it. In case you would like to get the program, I'd just like everybody to know that today is the last day of all our webinar sessions and the webinar special offers. You're getting a special package with, super value deal with the program and some Maharishi herbal products. If you'd like to go through them, please do go through them, because the offer might not be available after this. And with this, we would like to conclude our Women's Day special series. This has indeed been a very, very, I would say, the perfect ending to this session with your to these webinars with your session, Mary. Thank you so much for this experience, and thank you to everybody. There's thank yous raining in, and people are coming up with such beautiful messages for you, Mary, and for us, and we are very, very glad. This is very humbling that we receive so much love from you. A lot of love from us for you, and this message of loving ourselves has been very, very empowering, and I think tomorrow will be a different day, and for us today already is a different day. because the sun just rose with this beautiful thought for us here. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So Sandra's asking for the link. Sandra, right there, you must see an ad below with the, you'll be able to see it right there below, which says there's a link to the offer price. You can click there and go. And you'll also be taken to the program page once this webinar ends, so you can take a look at the webinar. To anyone who missed this, we'll send you replays. And to someone who just said they're sad that the webinars are over, we don't want them to be sad. We'll come back very soon with more of these for many, many, many more sessions to come. Thank you so much. Have a great, great day ahead. Look forward to seeing you very soon. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.